So now it's time to proceed with our program and invite our first speaker, Tom Nichols from Avaus, to think about what is the future-proof marketing and how kind of future looks like from Avaus' point of view. Please welcome Tom Nichols.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Hello. Now you can hear me, I guess. Thanks. Very excited to be here. Nice to see a large crowd here. It's actually my first time as well, not raising any hands. I'm really looking forward to hearing the other really exciting cases about data-driven design. Just a few words about myself. So I have a background of about 20 years in digital, mostly as an entrepreneur, working in various consultancies mainly. The last little more than 10 years in Avaus, which we founded about 2007-ish, into the intersection of data and digital. So that's sort of my perspective. But we were discussing with Ilari, we were sort of talking about, okay, so who are we actually talking to today? So I thought I'd do a sort of a raise of a hand. So how many of you identify yourself as designers? Okay, maybe half. How many are developers? Okay, maybe 20%. Data scientist or somebody doing data hands-on? Okay, a few. Managers of any kind? Some. Did anybody not raise their hand yet? What are you? Okay, so great. So a lot of different people, and I think that's sort of where data and design comes together. That's really a cross-competence thing. When I was preparing for this speech, I was sort of thinking about data and design. So what is it really about? I was sort of starting from the design perspective because I have to admit something. I'm sort of a wannabe designer myself, so I've sort of always liked design. But I have one particular area that I'm really interested in, which is architecture. And I've had the opportunity to build a few houses during the last 15 years. So I built this house a couple of years ago. And I was sort of starting to think, okay, why is this place important for me? What has gone into the design of this place? And is there something that we can learn sort of from that thing? So I came up with these 4 words, sort of, what is good design? Of course, it's functional. It has to sort of be usable and user-friendly. It has to be feasible. It has to be sort of within budget. If it's a company context, it has to be profitable. It has to be somehow sustainable. It has to respect the environment and sort of energy efficiency. But I would say, first and foremost, it has to somehow generate an emotional response. It has to feel like something. And that sort of, for me, is sort of design. And that's sort of perhaps the glasses I'm going to have on my head today when I talk about design. What kind of emotional responses are we actually creating with design? That's sort of our main job as designers, as developers, as data scientists and managers. I'm going to talk about 3 things. So first, just a few words about future-proofing, which was in the headline of this section, which is also very much what Avaus is about. Sort of, we're trying to sort of build capabilities and things that help companies sort of be future-proof. So I'm going to say a few words about that. But then I thought that I'll take the privilege as being the first speaker to set the scene and sort of look into the future and look what this data and design sort of intersection actually might bring us. And there's some really, really exciting things, but then I think there's also a lot of things that really sort of puts a lot of responsibility on us because, as Lassi was saying, sort of the whole issue of social responsibility and ethics is really something which becomes so much more important. And then finally, probably going to rush through the last section, but then, the so what. So yeah, okay, there's going to be all these changes, but what do they actually mean for us as we're working in this field? But starting off with future-proofing, just a few ideas. If you look at design, I think, if I ask this, what is design? I think I'm going to have quite many answers from different people. I think this is one good picture, at least for me, sort of makes it somehow clearer. So you have design, of course, on different levels. You design sort of, big things like the Finnish healthcare system, sort of a really, really, really big thing. Design experiences, taking my 7-year-old kid to the doctor, what's the journey like? You design services like an app that helps me sort of keep healthy and active and so forth. And then you, of course, design the individual components like the form where I sort of book the time to the doctor and so forth. And the other glass, one glass, as I said, is emotions. The other glass I'm going to have on today is AI, because I think that's really sort of what data ends up being sort of from a design perspective. And AI will have a really, really big impact on all of these levels of design. And sort of I think us as being part of design processes somehow need to react on all these levels. So I made this picture, and I'm sure it's nothing new, but this for me is the future-proofing part. So yeah, there's a lot of talk about AI and what it can do and sort of the capabilities it can build, but without sort of the dimension of how it actually affects people. And sort of, as I said, my view to it is how it affects the emotions, the emotional response and feelings. It's sort of cold. So I would really say that the future-proofing part of the customer experience is in the intersection of how we generate emotion sort of with the help of data and AI. So for me, that's sort of what I'm going to talk about, and that for me is a future-proofing thing. Okay, so then a little bit about sort of looking forward. What can we see? What's happening? I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with this innovation framework where you put sort of different horizons into innovation. So you have things that are really close by, and usually, people say that about 70% of your sort of time spent and investment in innovation and sort of doing new things should go into things that are quite close by, sort of somehow related to the core of what you do. Then you have things that are a bit further apart, like that island there in the mist. You can somehow see them, but it's really not quite clear yet what they will be, but 20% of your time should go into that. And then you have the things that are completely in the mist. You have no idea what you have just a feeling that there's something there, but you're not really sure about that, and 10% of your time should go into that. So I was thinking about how can we put design and data-driven design into this context. And I sort of, the sort of horizon thing, the stuff I'm going to talk about now is sort of divided into three things. So insight-driven design, something that we do every day already now, but how can AI help us sort of create better emotional responses through that? Generative design, which is something upcoming already, some people are doing it, but it will be sort of quite a big change for the actual design process. And then sort of quite far ahead, I think, but something that for sure will come is how we actually can adapt our designs using AI to the emotional states that our sort of users and customers are in. So these horizons will be the next maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Horizon one, first, insight-driven design. I think what we've sort of been doing with service design and methodologies like that for the last 10 years or so has been really sort of to integrate the feedback loop into the design process. We've sort of realized that we're actually designing for people, and it's good to have people participate in that process. And we've sort of come up with all kinds of methodologies of how we make people participate in that. I think this concept of a digital twin will make that more efficient. So the question is, how can we, tenfold or hundredfold the amount of feedback in a short time that we can get sort of into our design process? That's really sort of the question. How can AI make our design process more efficient by driving more insight into that process? So basically, this is used very much in engineering, where you sort of have physical products and then you make a digital twin and sort of tweak around with that digital twin to see what kind of responses there are. But we can actually make digital twins of consumers as well to sort of have feedback there. So we know sort of attributes that go into a consumer experience and how the consumers respond to that. We can make a digital twin out of that consumer or that consumer group, and then have more attributes going in and looking at what comes out, which will make it much more efficient, quicker way of designing things. We've also started to automate the testing processes. So instead of doing manual testing, we have sort of machine testing where sort of the AI algorithm actually creates the variants that we are testing. And this is just one example of a product that is testing websites and sort of looking at the conversion and then doing sort of more variations and looking at what happens to that. So this is something we also have been working with our clients. this brings me into the second horizon, where actually AI is sort of generating things. So it's not just sort of something that provides insight into the design process, but actually algorithms start to take some piece and part of the design process. And this isn't really a new thing in a way. I think most of us who read sports scores or financial news and so forth have read for many years already news items that have been produced by AI algorithms. And actually, according to research, people can't really tell apart which one is produced by a human and which one is produced by an algorithm. I think the interesting thing here is this is an application where an AI algorithm is producing product information. And the problem we have when sort of AI becomes a part of the experience is that what we're trying actually to do is make those experiences much more personal. So for each and every one of us, there should be a different experience because each and every one of us are different and sort of the emotional response we produce is different. That sort of brings the problem of how do we make it into a productive process? How do we actually create that amount of content and that amount of sort of designs which will sort of be needed for that personalized experience? Of course, this is one way of doing it, but I would argue it, instead of just taking the sort of product information on information of sports scores and so forth, what if we could put the customer information into the background parameters and actually these wordsmiths and sort of algorithms produce not only an automated version of how an NBA match was sort of how it ended up, but actually produces a personalized version because they know that Golden State Warriors is sort of a team I'm most interested in. So the actual content becomes also personalized for me. So I think this is really interesting. This I think was just a phenomenal example. Alibaba creating 8,000 banner designs per second, altogether 400 million designs. Again, just sort of bringing productivity into the design process. And then, as I said, I'm sort of very much into architecture, and I like also classic Scandinavian furniture. I think this is a fun project that many of you probably know about, but sort of making the AI or asking the AI algorithm to design a new classical chair, putting in 2,000 chairs into the algorithm and asking it to sort of come up with the next classic. And these are the four sort of solutions. And you'll see we're not fully there yet. The usability sort of emotional response is there, but functionality perhaps not yet in most of these. But I'm sure we'll get there. So I think this is sort of generative design. AI taking a part of that design process is one thing. Still sort of perhaps under this headline of generative design, I think another thing we're seeing is the interface by which we're interacting with all these services is changing. So we used to have computers, now we're all on the mobile. Soon we'll all be talking to digital assistants. And I've been trying to sort of make a friendship with two new friends. One is called Siri, and the other one is called Alexa. I've been trying to sort of build a meaningful relationship, and I've failed so far. They really can't handle all the stuff that I'm trying to do. But still, I think that interface will sort of be a really major change in how sort of services are produced. And I think there's two things that we as designers or people taking part in design need to think about. One is, as said, if we want to produce an emotional response, we somehow need to integrate the personality in whatever we design. It started with brands and brand having a brand personality. But now when we're doing services, the basic thing with Siri or Alexa or what have you is that yes, they have to have the capability to actually do meaningful things. It's not there yet, it's sort of going there, but soon in a couple of years all these assistants will be able to do a lot of useful things for you. And then I think again coming back to the emotional thing, what's the personality, what's the sort of the emotional sort of kick we get out of interacting with these things. One personality, this is just one take on how you can perhaps put them on a scale. But one personality is perhaps somebody just very useful, hiding in the background, just taking care of things. Whereas Jaibo, for instance, is an attempt at making a personality which sort of is somehow fun and sort of entertaining to interact with and so forth. And there's going to be probably much more variations. But I think that this will be one area for us as designers. My insurance company, for instance, they have a chatbot on their front page. At some point in time, it will need to have some kind of sort of personality and some kind of response, and we need to think about how we'll do that. Obviously, the other thing is with this assistance is that we as designers are not only trying to reach the end customer, the end consumer. Actually, there's going to be a filter in between. So the digital assistant will take sort of the role of trying to figure out what is relevant and what is sort of important for that specific person. So actually, we as designers need to design things also for the assistant. And in a way, this isn't anything new, because that's the way we do it already today. Google is basically sort of the filter in between, and whatever we do, we need to design it in a way so that it's sort of searchable on Google. So we actually design for the Google algorithm already today, but it will become just much more complex and sort of important in the future. Right. Then moving on to Horizon 3. So, something that's in the mist. We can feel that there's something coming there, but we really don't know what it is yet. Talking about emotions, sort of moving from just artificial intelligence to emotional intelligence, or artificial emotional intelligence. So how we sort of can adapt to the sort of emotional state our customers are in. I have a good example. I don't know how about you, but one thing I really, really hate is taking my car to service. And I have a car. I won't name the brand, but it's, it has to be taken to service more often than perhaps many other brands. And I've sort of booked my service for last week. I was there last week in the showroom, and I sort of said that these 3 things need to be taken care of. And when I was there, they said that, okay, this one thing, yeah, we can fix that, but we actually somehow messed up. So these 2 other things, we're not going to be able to fix them today, so you have to come back. And I was getting more annoyed, and sort of smoke coming out of my ears and so forth. And this guy across the counter, he didn't realize what was happening, that I was becoming really, pissed at this whole situation. And so by came a sort of some kind of, I don't know, office assistant or some other person and she immediately thought, okay, now this guy is really, really sort of losing it, so I have to intervene. So she sort of knew how she could sort of interpret it, how I was feeling, and she was also seeing that, okay, this isn't going to end in a good way, so we better somehow do something to fix this. So she took me to the side, fixed the things, gave me a free car for the day to sort of, call me up and so forth. And then I was really, really happy. So what happened there was that in that service context, their service personnel, luckily with the assistant there, sort of could read my emotions and could then sort of interpret, okay, I don't want that emotional response. I don't want him being pissed and sort of losing it. I want him to sort of be happy and so forth. So I'm going to intervene somehow and do stuff to make that. I think this is sort of next thing for data and AI. How can we start using that to actually take in the emotional sort of state of people and then actually putting targets, where do we want people to be emotionally? And it will probably differ person to person. And how can we adapt the service output to do this? There are already technologies there that can read emotions from face expressions, from all the different 30 muscles and how they interact in the face. You can take the pulse, the new Apple Watch, even can take, which was launched yesterday, can take ECG. So there's a lot of sort of sensors already there to start looking at how we can interact with emotions. Then, of course, the next question is, how do we then make the sort of computer or the AI adapt the response and understand that? I think this is just a really, in a way, exciting, but also quite scary citation that actually all we are just biological algorithms, and that there's no reason why these biological algorithms that we have couldn't be replicated in sort of a digital AI. And if we can do that, then obviously we obviously can build services that adapt sort of to the emotional state of our customers. Right, so that's just sort of setting the scene and what's on the horizon. And then perhaps to finish off, a couple of words about, so what the heck does this mean then for us? There was this long lines in Lasse's or in the video where, does it mean that we're all jobless because AI is going to, do everything for us? No, probably not. We probably have a really, really big role in all of this, but the exciting thing is that we will have to change, and we will have to sort of adopt new sort of ways and sort of learn new things. First of all, I think the important thing is that we have to be the ones who decide which problems are important enough to solve. Where do we put this artificial intelligence? Which design problems do we want to actually solve? That shouldn't be left to the algorithm to decide. That should be us saying that these are real sort of important things. And this is the sort of objectives, and these are the constraints that we want to have this thing in. So we as designers, the sort of most important thing we need to do is define the important problems to solve. Yeah, the second thing, of course, even though I think the sort of emotional intelligence of AI will sort of be there, still we're people, and I hope, want to be around people, and we sort of have a social context that we're sort of interacting with. Although I don't know, I mean, sitting around a table with 4 people, everybody on their phone, they're not actually interacting with each other, they're interacting with somebody else, but still, it's a social context and empathy. That's for sure will be something that we have to bring into the process. I also think that it's not that much about sort of doing the final designs or doing the designs as it is sort of putting out the sort of frames into which the designs are born. So it's more about, which parameters and so forth. And so actually the design process becomes much more of a development process than perhaps before. And also sort of, there was a lot of developers and data scientists here, but also I think for all the designers, I think the developer mindset is sort of crucial to have. And then I'm going to finish off by the most important thing, because I have a 14, soon to be 15-year-old son, so a guy in his teens who is emotionally not that stable, It's, teens tend to be. So these technologies, who soon will sort of enable us to read emotional states, and soon will enable us to sort of manipulate in a way how people feel, have tremendous power. And it's sort of up to us to use that for the good of people and not for the good of ourselves alone. And I think here sort of also comes the very important question of business models. What are the actually business models driving all the use of AI? Sorry to say, but for instance, Facebook's business model probably isn't the best business model to sort of give all the data sort of to, because their business is based on sort of driving traffic and driving demand and so forth. So being on the side of the good guys, really thinking about the good of the customer in the long term, thinking about the business model and ensuring that the business model doesn't drive us in the wrong direction, I think is really, really crucial. So with that, I'm going to leave you with this picture. So this is sort of really, I think, in 3 words, what I'm trying to say. Emotions together with AI bring future-proof customer experience. So, thank you.
Thank you.